Ah, summertime. When you get out of the city, go up north to your cabin or strange abandoned villa on an island, and you make new friends of the human variety and other species as well.
Especially if you're Canadian. Then you simply must befriend a wild beast.
Hi, everybody. This is Sweater Weather, a podcast about Canadian arts and culture. I'm Aaron.
I'm Naomi.
Today we're talking about the novel Bear. What year was Bear published, Naomi?
Bear by Marian Engel was published in 1976.
It's something of a classic, a dark classic in CanLit.
Very much. It's always described as controversial, scandalous.
Even all these decades later, it's still controversial.
Mm-hmm. And although Marian Engel wrote quite a few books, this is the one that's always remembered. It's by far her most famous.
Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why this book, short book, what is it, 150 pages?
Yeah, it could definitely be described as a novella. And it was published. So do you want to know a little bit about Marian Engel? Do you want me to tell you about the book, or what do you want me to tell you here?
Well, let's talk a little bit about
our experiences.
Our first experiences with whatever we're talking about. So
did you ever have to read this in school, Aaron?
I don't think any teacher was brave enough to assign this to us.
I guess I mean university.
I still goes for that. I don't think in university I read this book. I mean, I studied literature.
Yeah, you have 3 degrees in English literature. Never
took plenty of Canadian literature classes, and this is, of course, a classic of Canadian literature, but I never did read it in school. I don't believe I did. Now, It was kind of the talk of the grad student lounge, however, I think for a couple of weeks. This is when I was in between degrees and was working part-time at Brock University in St. Catharines. That's my hometown. And I had a few contracts to teach in TA for various literature classes and writing classes. And I remember hanging out with other TAs and some grad students. And this book was being talked about, and it was kind of like a funny thing. This is, we're talking about the early 2000s. We're talking about like 2008, 2010, those couple of years there. I feel like our culture was still very much in the epic mode, where things that were like, wow, can you believe that happened, was really kind of novel. And so this book, even though it's older, from 1976, right? I mean, it does suit that ethos quite well because, I mean, I guess we haven't mentioned it yet, but for those of you who don't know, this book is about a woman who has a sexual encounter with a bear.
Oh, not just an encounter, a relationship. A summer romance.
Okay, so see, here's the thing. I should also admit, too, that I haven't read the book in a while. I read it back then. And I've dipped into it a little bit in preparation for this episode, but Naomi's the one who did all of the homework for us today. So she's going to be leading the discussion, and I'll be asking her questions about it. So it's not just a sexual encounter. No. Because I remember that scene vividly, even though it was many years ago that I read it. Oh, sure.
I mean, there's a scene that's always like passed around or whatever. Like, can you believe this? And that's when the woman and the bear first, become sexually acquainted, let's say. But it's not like, that's not at all that happens, and it's not the only sexual encounter between them. And it's not just sex, it's love, Aaron.
It's love. She's actually in love with this bear. Okay. So maybe we should talk about the background of the book and Marian Engel. So who was she? I know that she was, I don't know if she was prolific. She published quite a bit though, right?
Yeah, she did. And she was a contemporary of Margaret Atwood and Alice Munro, and was like really part of that whole kind of like rise of feminist Canadian literature, let's say. She was born...
Second wave feminism in the 70s, 60s, 70s, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a certain kind of, very, very 70s, very Canadian, like feminist, and sort of like getting back to the land intertwined with each other in this very Margaret Atwood kind of way.
Yeah, so maybe we should brief aside about Margaret Atwood in this, because she was obviously a leading figure in this moment, like in the 70s. Yeah. She's a really mainstream figure now, of course. Her work's been adapted into television, and she's had lots of best-selling books over the decades. But back then, like in the early 70s, her first published novel, called Surfacing, was like a kind of experimental.
That was not her first novel. Her first novel was The Edible Woman.
Oh, that was before Surfacing?
Yeah, and she actually wrote that as a grad student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had that wrong. I thought, but Surfacing is her second book?
It was her second book.
And so it is very much imbued with, kind of a certain kind of feminist theory. This is about a woman who goes up north and has a kind of liberatory experience in nature. And there's lots of other themes going on there. But
well, her relationships with men, her sort of sexual desire / feeling like, and this is the same thing as in The Edible Woman, feeling like sexually attracted to men and at the same time not wanting to become like a wife and mother, like her own mother, not wanting to be subsumed into a relationship with a man, in the way that, can and did easily happen. So this kind of tension, and like a big part of Surfacing is the characters having these kind of flashbacks to, you're not sure what, that you realize, she is a abortion that she has like ambivalent feelings about.
Right.
And then spoiler alert, she ends up kind of melding into the landscape and like becoming an animal, or like,
that's where it gets kind of experimental and strange. So people who have like differing opinions about this early book.
I've heard it called the worst novel ever published, and
I've also heard it called my favorite novel by Margaret Atwood.
So have I.
Some people have said that they prefer that. It depends on what their tastes are. That is a much more experimental phase of her career before she starts writing more like mainstream narratives.
Yes.
So this is in that, but there's that. And then there's also this, we're talking about these other books, but it is kind of important for the background. So Margaret Atwood is such a big figure that we have to talk about her other work of literary theory, literary criticism called Survival, which is published in 1972, I think. Just off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But that is it is like a pretty accessible guide to the major themes of Canadian literature as she saw them. This was a very nationalist moment when it was artists' prerogative to construct a national identity. They thought that Canada didn't have a firm sense of self. It didn't have a consciousness of its own literary history and cultural history, and so that it needed to be actively constructed. And this was being supported by government institutions as well, who created the Canada Council for the Arts and all kinds of other funding bodies to support arts and culture in Canada. And one of the main themes was a national identity. And so Canadian nationalism was considered progressive back then. And that's something that's changed a lot since.
Absolutely. It's changed, but it didn't change that recently, because I remember I guess like 20 years is a long time, but no, even 20 years ago, we were still all talking about, what does it mean to be Canadian? And that was kind of like this almost cliche of like, when people were like, well, why are you writing a novel? Oh, I'm exploring what it means to be Canadian. What is Canadian identity?
It was how you justified what you were doing. So what is Marian Engel's life?
So she was born in 1933 in Toronto, and she actually was in foster care and then was adopted. So she had this twin that she was separated from when she was 3. They were adopted by different families.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they never were reunited.
Really?
But that was something she talked about throughout her life, apparently, yeah. And she grew up around Ontario, small towns, Port Arthur, Brantford, Galt, Hamilton, and Sarnia. So, like, not too far from where you're from.
Some of those places, yeah.
Yeah, well, Hamilton at least, right? And she got her bachelor's at McMaster, and then her master's of Canadian literature, Master's of Arts in Canadian Literature at McGill in 1957. And there she met her MA supervisor, Hugh McLennan.
Oh, yeah.
Who was a big time, Canadian author of maybe one of the first kind of batch of really successful Canadian authors, like who are known as Canadian authors. Right?
He had some commercial success.
Yeah. And apparently they were kind of correspondents for the rest of her life. Like he was a mentor and a friend to her forevermore.
Yeah.
So like a real influence on her, I would imagine. And then, she lived in Toronto for a long time. She was married to a mystery novel writer called Marian Engel, and who she ultimately divorced, but did have twin sons with, a son and a daughter who were twins. And she died really young at the age of 51 in 1985. of cancer. And that was not that long after publishing her very controversial book that we're talking about, the one that she's remembered for, Bear. So, and an interesting thing about her, I think an interesting thing for us about her is that she was a founding member. Like some of the sources I saw actually said she was the founder of the Writers Union of Canada.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Margaret Atwood, and she would like talk about writing, and apparently, you know, she was feeling kind of down about stuff, and Margaret Atwood told her at one point like, oh, don't worry, we'll be old soon and then people will have to be nice to us, which is a really sadly ironic comment considering that Marian Engel never got to be old. And now that Margaret Atwood is old, people are not particularly nice to her. If anything, less nice than ever.
She's doing okay.
Although she's doing okay, but still, you know, like it has turned out not to be true that people have to be nice when you're old. But yeah, so she did publish quite a few novels, and she'd already published 2 books when she wrote Bear. But
so she didn't write that many.
Well, it came kind of in the middle.
Okay.
But her publisher actually rejected Bear.
Yeah, I mean, as a publisher, I would worry as well.
And they thought it was too weird.
Yeah.
And then Robertson Davies championed her to M&S, another publisher, McClellan and Stewart, who did take it.
Okay, so they were a major. I mean, they still are.
Yeah, so she had to switch publishers. Her editor from before like didn't
wasn't down with it.
He wasn't down with it. Thought it was bizarre, and
I mean, it is bizarre.
Yeah. And yeah, for sure it is. And I mean, that's what, like, people are still shocked by it, you know. I
mean, this is why we're talking about it, to be honest.
I mean, that book is almost 50 years old and people are still shocked by it, which is quite amazing. Quite a feat. But it did win the Governor General's Award for fiction.
Oh, so it won a major award, like the major award.
The major award for fiction in Canada. So I mean, it was taken seriously. And
it's well written. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
It's not okay. So it's funny to encounter the book, and I'm not sure what edition this is, but you know, from the library edition, and this was also the soft cover that those grad students back at Brock University.
Yeah, the cover you want to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, so it was it's like a take on a typical romance novel cover where there's a woman scantily clad, and where the man who should be shirtless standing behind her, you know, instead it's a bear.
Yeah. And it's not just that she's scantily clad, she's topless. Like her breasts are completely exposed.
She's topless. Yeah, okay.
And she's wearing kind of a silk flowing skirt and nothing else. And the skirt is part like white on the front and like red at the back, which could imply blood.
Okay.
And the bear is standing behind her and kind of holding her in such a way that they could be engaged in sexual intercourse.
In that moment?
Well, like, let's take a look at the novel cover.
We don't have to.
No, I would like you to, and I've actually got it here ready for you to look at because I wanted you to take a look at it. And I mean, it's had a lot of different covers since then. But it's had a lot of different covers over the years. Like sometimes it's just like a bear. And the most recent cover, when it was actually republished 10 years ago, is just a woman's bare back with like a claw mark on it.
Okay.
So like kind of more, like much more contemporary looking, kind of almost elegant, you know, like the naked woman's back and the, you know, it could be like any naked woman's back, except there's like the scratches down it from the bear claw. But let me show you. Got Aaron here to look at this cover.
Okay, I guess. I mean, so there are theories online that this bear is actually doing it to her in this moment.
Well, it's been described that way, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it seems to me like, as I said, a take on a typical romance novel where there's a woman being embraced by a muscular man, you know?
Yeah.
And instead of but just picture a bear instead.
Yeah, so it's a bear. Like, it's very much a bear.
This is a black bear. It's not a grizzly bear. She's not hanging out with a grizzly bear because and you know, your basic wilderness training in Canada is always trying to tell you the difference between the black bears and the grizzly bears.
But wait, so are black bears actually black because this bear is brown?
Well, they call. I mean, is it not mentioned in the book that it's a Black?
Yeah, I think she describes it as black, but like in almost all the pictures of it on the different renditions and covers, it is brown, which is kind of funny.
Grizzly bears are sometimes called brown bears.
Yeah,
too.
I think you're right. I think the bear in the book is like very much is black, has black fur, but for whatever reason, when people make covers for this book, they can't resist
making it
look
like a grizzly bear,
making it brown. So reader beware. This is a black, not a brown bear.
Safer to approach.
Yeah.
Well, you're not supposed to approach any of them.
But yeah, so the cover is quite scandalous to look at, where you're like, oh my goodness, this is clearly.
So that's the original cover.
Oh yes.
And so they do use it in the current library edition that I had, which is a New Canadian Library from McClellan and Stewart, I suppose.
I mean, there's like looking online, you can see there's been quite a few different covers. Like
this book doesn't go away. But
this classic cover is the one that sticks in your head. Like you said, I don't have a specific memory of when I was first aware of bear. I do remember like a couple of years ago, it had a bit of a resurgence. People were talking about it. Mm-hmm. But at that point, the image in my head was very much this cover as well. And then I read little snippets of it then, just because I had friends who were talking about it and laughing at it, friends who are not writers. And so this book started getting a little bit of attention again recently because it was reissued by M&S. And then there was a little documentary about it on CBC Ideas, and people were just kind of talking about it again. And I had friends who are not writers who heard of it for the first time at this point. And,
is that right?
And were like kind of sending around excerpts from it.
Yeah.
And being and sort of laughing and the kind
for a
of
new generation.
And the kind of like, oh, I'm so embarrassed to be Canadian. This is our national
embarrassed.
Book. Embarrassed. Not embarrassed, but
Were they writing tweets like that? Where it was like M hyphen
yeah,
bear?
No, I don't know because I'm not on Twitter /X. But yeah, I mean, not like genuinely embarrassed, but just kind of like, oh my goodness, this is so Canadian and this is so
it feels
like
very Canadian.
Kind of ridiculous, I guess. And then sort of lines from it that out of context or even in context are a little bit like what? A little bit eyebrow raising. There's one point where she cries out, "Eat me, bear."
Oh, God.
And I mean, in the context, she actually kind of wants the bear to eat her, literally.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously it has like a double entendre because the bear is performing cunnilingus on her regularly.
Regularly? I just remember that happening once.
No, it doesn't just happen once. So let me tell you about the novel. So in the novel, the main character, her name is Lou, and it's in third person. Mm. And apparently that's a name that she used for protagonists in other stories too. So this character, Lou, she's 27 and she works as an archivist in Toronto. And she works in this like dusty basement archive situation. And she's kind of lonely. She doesn't have friends. She's just in this basement all the time cataloging stuff. That's her story. She's described as living like a mole at the beginning in the city. Really,
really like dry, boring.
Underground, literally, and just kind of scuffling around.
Yep.
And later we learn that like her only human contact is with her boss, who she has like a really unsatisfying sexual relationship with, where every now and then they have sex on his desk.
Oh.
And they're careful to move aside like the more fragile archival materials.
Okay.
And she just lies back and lets it happen. So this is her experience of like, that's as intimate as it gets. Her life is not going so well. Let's put it that way.
Well, time's up for that boss. It only took 50 years.
Well, yeah, he's not a good boss. That's for sure. So not the greatest. I mean, she doesn't like hate him or anything, but it's just kind of a depressing situation in the context of the book. So she is given the task or asked if she will go to this island where there's a solitary house on an island where this fellow lived and his family lived. His daughter inherited the house and then left the house not to the family, but to the archive, to the institute that she works for. Because there's like a very extensive library.
Okay, so they want to. Okay,
but so they're sending her there to archive his books.
The books.
Yeah, to catalog his books.
But they've left the whole property. They've left the whole property to this historical, this like government-run historical institute.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, but I think it's mostly because of the library. It's supposed to be like a historic site, but like it's the documents in there that are the real prize.
And this is prime real estate, folks. Like this is an island, and I'm not sure. I mean, I think they've fictionalized the names, but this is like, north. This is the country north of Toronto. This is cottage country.
Yeah.
This is like...
It could have sold for lots of money. They could have made deliciously expensive cottages and sold them to people on the island. So the family's really mad that the daughter left this island to this institute instead of to the family. Mm-hmm. And a little background is that, so the guy who had the library, his name was Colonel Carey, and it was stipulated that the next Colonel Carey would own the house. And so the machination that led to the daughter owning it was that they named her Colonel. So her name is Colonel Carey, so that she would get the house.
Well, that's some nice maneuvering.
Yeah. So there was this woman whose name was Colonel Carey who owned the house.
Nice. It's pretty funny.
And then, so the house is an octagon.
It's in the shape of an octagon on an island.
Yes. And it's like a big, fancy octagonal house.
Built in the 1850s or something, right?
That sounds right.
It's like, yeah. Well, he was, I just remember that he was a veteran because I reread the beginning again, and he was a veteran in the Napoleonic Wars in Italy. So this is the early 1800s. And then he ends up emigrating to Canada.
So maybe it was a granddaughter who was named Colonel Carey.
Anyway, this is a guy who's like from the first generation of like British immigrants.
Yeah. And so part of the thing about his library is there's a lot of British stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like she was hoping to find kind of more documentation of kind of the region, but it's like a lot of stuff from England. So she's like stuck reading, she's like reading a lot of Victorian English stuff.
Okay.
And
she's sent to the island and she's living there
by herself
for the
summer.
For the whole summer.
Yeah. And like there's no way to contact anyone. It's not like there's phones or internet or anything. So she's alone in this house for the summer, working on this archive, and it's kind of her thing though. Like she's very much looking forward to it.
She's having fun.
She loves it. She wants to go. She likes being alone.
It's perfect. I mean, she loves archival work, but she just hates being in the dusty archival basement.
She doesn't really love the city. She's out of the city. And there's this one guy called Homer who like comes to like drives her over on the boat.
He owns the store nearby.
He owns the store and he makes sure she has supplies and stuff. She goes to his store and gets what she needs. And so she sees him occasionally. That's really, and then there's a woman on another island who's 100 years old called Lucy Leroy. And she also has a son or a nephew. And she is in charge of taking care when, our main character Lou isn't there, when there's no one around. She takes care of the property's resident bear.
So there's a bear living on this island.
There's a bear. And the bear comes with the house, and it's almost like a pet bear. But it was a favorite of the family. Like this family, it's implied, has always had bears. Like whether it's always been the same bear is not clear.
Well, it couldn't have always been the same.
No, but the bear, like how long it's been this bear, we're not sure. Like how old is the bear? But the bear lives in a shed and it like is on a chain.
No, sounds cruel.
It is. The bear is described as sad.
Okay.
Ultimately, like originally. And she does think about like letting the bear go free when she first sees how sad it is. But then Homer is like, you can't let the bear go free. Like, I know what you're thinking. But the fact is that this bear, if you let it go free, will wreak havoc on the countryside. It'll run around ruining everything.
I mean, is that what he says, really? I mean, I would think more that the bear just probably can't even survive on its own anymore.
That's not what he says. But he also says Lucy, the 100-year-old indigenous woman, who they obviously don't use the word Indian, which contemporary readers are offended by and is no longer acceptable. She will be really upset. Like, this is her friend, the bear. Like, do not let this bear go.
Yeah.
Because Lucy, normally comes over and hangs out with the bear. The bear is her friend and she chats with the bear and she sits for hours just like talking to the bear.
Okay.
And like, you don't want to, letting the bear go is not an option. So just get that out of your head. That's right up front.
All right. So they're trying to, to make the story possible, they want to make it She wants to make it so that it's not an option that we let this bear go, which seems upfront like the thing you should do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very tempting at first because she sees the bear. He just lies there. He looks listless and sad. And she has to feed him like dog food.
Oh.
And then in order to bond with him, she's told by Lucy, the indigenous woman, that she has to poop every morning, like near the bear.
Okay.
That the bear will then also poo, I think. And then they'll be friends.
Oh.
So she has to do this, even though she finds it quite strange.
Okay. To
go out and poop on the ground, like near the bear's hut. And it works. Like the bear seems friendly. And she knows she should kind of be scared of the bear, but has the vibe that she's not scared of the bear. He seems pretty chill. So she's basically supposed to leave the bear chained up, but she doesn't. She like takes the bear for walks. Mm-hmm. And she will take the bear off the chain. She'll basically walk him like he's on a leash, if I understand correctly, at first. Like she keeps the chain on him, but she takes him to the water. And she's like swimming in the lake every day, right? So she'll take the bear and they'll swim together.
Yeah.
And so they start their friendship with these swims that they go on together. And at one point, the bear like almost accidentally pushes her under and stuff because he's like playing and he tries to swim over her and like pushes her down and she starts spluttering and stuff. So we get there's a danger to the bear.
Right, how dangerous it is to be friends with a bear.
Yeah. And the bear doesn't know like that he's so much bigger than her and could easily hurt her, I guess.
This isn't Winnie the Pooh we're talking about. We're talking about a real black bear.
And there's it's very insistent. Like this is a real bear. Like she's constantly kind of saying that outright.
This is a realist novel.
Yeah.
Like the writing it's very well written. I mean, it's not cartoonish.
No, and there's a lot about like nature. She's out in the like foraging and living alone like on this island. So, and there's no plumbing. So she's like very much having to take care of things in a kind of...
Well, she would have to poop outside anyway then.
Well, there's an outhouse.
Yeah, right.
But she has to use an outhouse and she has to like do things in a very
rustic way.
And so and she's also taking note of, and she has to kind of like use a boat to go get groceries and all these things, right? So there's a lot of descriptions of just like the rather arduous tasks of daily life, as well as like the beauty all around her, the various plants and so on. And, the lighting of the fire and the waking up freezing cold and the, making of breakfast in the cold and all those things.
Yeah, it's kind of like rustic living, cottage life, like very cottage life with really old fashioned kind of cottage where you didn't have plumbing or electricity.
Yeah, so basically we have her dealing with rustic life, her hanging out with a bear, her doing her archival work, and then occasionally like a little bit of backstory about how mostly about how her sexual relationships with men have been less than ideal. There's her sexually inappropriate boss. And then there's like one other relationship that she remembers where she basically was in a mediocre relationship with a guy that left her for a younger woman. And she was devastated even though the guy wasn't that great.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a little bit of her relationship with the Homer guy.
Oh.
And she has a sexual relationship with him as well.
She does.
Yeah, but she's not really into it.
Okay.
I think she has sex with him once. He like comes onto her in a rather aggressive way and she manages to fend him off. And then later she decides to have sex with him. Mm-hmm. And he's rather just pragmatic and she feels nothing, it says. Like she feels nothing for him. Meanwhile, she likes him. Like she thinks he's fine.
Yeah.
But she realizes when he first makes a move on her or just assumes they're going to have sex, they're going through some stuff in the house together and she gets dressed up in like some old clothes that are hanging around that belong to Colonel Carrie the woman. And it's like a rather like sexy dress or whatever. And the guy, Homer, is like, oh, since you're wearing that, now you have to have, like, you obviously want to have sex with me. He thinks that this is all foreplay. And she's not interested at all. And then she has this kind of epiphany, like, I'm no longer going to be this kind of woman that just lets men have sex with me because they say so, like her boss. So she's had this evolution where she's like, this personal kind of evolution where she's like, I'm not going to be just a kind of sexual toy to be played with. And she's kind of experienced sexual agency for the first time and she's going to not give it up again.
Okay.
This is with the bear. So I've gotten kind of out of sequence here. So she and the bear
So when does this happen after Homer?
Yeah, so she's already sexually involved with the bear when she gets sexually involved with Homer.
Oh,
so
what? Really?
So
she dips into the bear, does she?
So let me go back. So she and the bear, they are swimming together, they're hanging out, and then she starts letting the bear come into the house.
Okay.
So the bear starts hanging out in the house, like in front of the fire with her.
Wow, all right. Oh, wow.
And she'll be doing like her archival work and reading and stuff.
Different. It gives the term a bearskin rug a little bit of it.
Well, she does kind of use him as a rug. Like she'll bury her feet in his fur while she's reading or whatever. And
okay.
Like but then she keeps noting like he's not a dog, he's not a pet, he's a bear. Even though
she keeps treating him like one, basically.
Well, yeah, kind of. But we're constantly reminded like this is a bear. He smells like really strongly of bear. Mm-hmm. And he like rubs his butt on the tree all the time and stuff. And when she first gets her, he's really dirty. But then that's why she takes him in the lake.
For a swim.
Yeah, so she's always cleaning him in the lake.
Yeah.
But he still smells of bear. And then she starts to smell like bear all the time because she starts having these kind of cuddling sessions and stuff with the bear. Sometimes after they swim, he'll just kind of lick her back a bit or whatever. So it starts with a more innocent licking and touching and petting. Like she pets his fur and sometimes she'll just like get her hand right in his fur and her whole hand disappears into the fur because there's so much fur. So it sounds quite nice.
Okay.
And then one day she's really overheated and she gets naked
hanging out with
the bear, and then the bear just starts licking her whole body.
Oh, that's how it starts.
And she's like, I don't think it's sexual for the bear. I think it's implied like it's really not sexual for the bear.
It's like grooming or something.
Yeah. But then she entices the bear south, as she puts it.
Okay, that's the word used.
Yeah. And she invites the bear into her nether parts.
Oh my.
And the bear performs cunnilingus on her.
Okay.
And it's implied like for a really long time, like she's never known so generous a lover. And
really?
Yeah. The bear is committed to her pleasure in a way no man ever has been.
But could the bear really be committed, I wonder?
Well, we don't know what the bear's thinking. And she often notes that she doesn't know what the bear's thinking.
Right. I mean, the bear is depicted as a mysterious beast.
Yeah. Right? She has no way of knowing what's going on for the bear. And she's always like, oh, I wish I could somehow know what the bear's thinking. Like, not just about that, but about anything. She has no idea. But after that, like, it's implied like it becomes a regular thing. And they're hanging out all the time. Swimming, just kind of chilling in the library in front of the fire. And then sometimes, once again, the bear licks her all over, including her vagina.
Okay.
And it's in one of these subsequent times that she says, eat me, bear. And it like, oh yeah. And sometimes she like covers herself in honey trying to get the bear. Because sometimes the bear ignores her and then she won't lick her and then she tries to get him to by like.
So did Homer, who runs the convenience store nearby, notice her buying lots of honey, several jars of honey?
Homer does not know, but she makes sure that she like is always freshly washed when she sees him because she knows she smells like the bear. And at one point he does say, you smell like the bear. Like you stink of bear.
You've been hanging out with that bear a little too much, honey.
Yeah.
Does he suspect anything?
No, he does not suspect.
He doesn't like kind of look her up or down and go,
He doesn't suspect anything. No. And so, but like the bear never gets sexually aroused.
Right.
So she notices that the bear never gets an erection. And sometimes she tries to like fondle the bear's balls and stuff. She wants the bear to be sexually aroused, but the bear never is.
Jeez.
And then the kind of climax of the book, I guess, the bear gets an erection.
Oh, okay.
Finally. She's like, oh, okay. Finally, the bear got an erection. And she tries to entice the bear to have intercourse with her.
Oh, my God.
So she turns around on hands and knees and like presents herself. And at that point, the bear, instead of... And like before this, she has kind of said these things. Like she doesn't just say, eat me, bear. She says things like, pull off my head and stuff.
She has a death wish kind of.
So she has a bit of a death wish towards the bear, concerning the bear. So then the bear, instead of having sex with her, like claws her. And he rips her back.
I remember this.
So then she has a huge claw scrape.
Oh, wow.
And she screams and she's in terrible pain. And then the bear's like, huh?
Yeah.
And then I don't know if is exactly what we're supposed to get from it, but the bear's inscrutable.
Does the bear say anything?
No. The bear's erection immediately goes away and he lumbers off or whatever.
Yeah.
Then she wakes up the next morning. She can't remember what happened, but then she's like stuck to her bed because she's so bloody. She can't move.
Oh no. This is why one of the reasons you're not supposed to do that.
So she finally manages to like soak off her sweater by going into the lake fully clothed.
Ugh.
And she's all cut up and stuff. And the bear is just like waiting for his breakfast, like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And she actually isn't really upset about it. She's like, well, I guess this is the way it had to go. But like I've kind of neglected to mention the part where she very much feels that she's in love with the bear.
Yeah.
Like this is not sexual only. She's like, I have finally found, like she's experiencing true romantic love in her opinion.
Okay.
And she's like always stroking the bear and she like sticks her fingers in his mouth and like feels his gums and his teeth and like.
She's being very intimate with this bear.
She's obsessed with the bear. She loves it.
I mean, she's in love. Like she's like in the very early infatuated stages of love with this bear.
Correct.
Where everything about the bear is interesting. And,
and lovable. And she like licks the bear's teeth and stuff.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Extremely. Wow. It's very visceral.
Very visceral. And there's a lot of talk about how the bear smells like very berry.
Bear like
musky.
Musky. Okay.
Extremely musky.
So this is, I mean, is the message of the book that this was a positive experience? This was a liberatory experience? Yes. Obviously it's temporary. Like it can't.
But it changes her forever.
Right. This is it's an interesting take on like the summer love story. Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of classic beach reading where, you know, there's a vacation romance. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That changes you forever.
Right. I mean, usually in the stories they imply that. Yeah. So she's changed forever. And how do we know that? Well,
I mean, she notes that she can feel herself changing. She's never going to let herself be like sexually used again.
Okay.
Which is a big thing. I mean, I think that's kind of like she's evolved as a woman in this way, in the sexual romantic way.
But how do we know that? I mean, because she's been injured in an attempt to have actual intercourse with this bear. And so how does the book end? I mean, that is near the end, right?
She goes back to the city at the end.
After that, she goes back to the city.
Not immediately, but yeah, like things start to wind down.
Okay.
And her archival work is kind of done. Oh, and like and one thing that I did find a little bit like much, but I guess is that
if it hasn't been in
she's
too much,
doing this archival work, these notes, these pieces of paper keep like randomly fluttering out of books, and it's all like handwritten notes about bears.
Really?
Yeah.
Written
it's
by
about like
who?
Facts about bears.
Oh, so this is
from Colonel Carey or like one of the Colonel
This is just like a narrative device to give us some.
Yeah, but it's also letting us know that the other occupants of the house, the Careys, like were also preoccupied with bears. Like they're the ones that kept the bears, right? So it's not completely ridiculous to think that they would have been like very interested in bear facts, right?
I guess. I mean, is the main. I mean, if they have a pet bear, then I guess they're very interested in bears.
Yeah.
Is it the major thing in their life, having a bear?
Well,
it's kind of implied, I guess.
I guess.
Because what do we learn about this this Carey estate? Like, do we learn anything about it except the bear? About how there was a bear there? I mean, that's like, what's the like? She was supposed to be archiving his library, right? This like historic library.
I think fall is coming because it's like getting cold again, and there's mention of the bear. Like the bear's going to hibernate at some point.
Right. So winter is coming. Yeah. And so, and then so she's leaving is like our final scene, like her
getting on the boat and leaving.
That's her final scene, is get her leaving on the boat. So we don't see her. My point is we don't see her again.
Back in the city. No.
We don't see
her. We don't see like the new her and her life.
No,
we see her leaving. And she's kind of like not her. She's like, well, that came to a natural conclusion. Like she's not. And Lucy, the indigenous woman who's 100 years old, comes back to like
take care of the bear again. Okay, so we're supposed to know the bear's
okay. And Homer is like, well, or no, Lucy. Oh no, it's Lucy's nephew or grandson or whoever he is shows up and it's like, oh, well, I hope you got along well with the bear. And she's like, I sure did.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, obviously the shock value of the story is quite high.
And then with this book, the first reading, like the sex with a bear is so prominent and sort of on the surface that you can't really not dwell on that.
Well, of course not. I mean, that's obviously what the book, when you put that in a book, that's what the book's about.
Right.
So, you shouldn't apologize for focusing on the fact that this book called Bear involves very prominent sexual acts with a bear. And that's the only, let's be honest, it's the reason we're still talking about it, is because of that. Lots of books from the era are totally forgotten.
I mean, why is this book considered, was it not just a scandalous, like, ooh, everyone should read this, pass it around book, but like a winner of the Governor General's Award, a canonical Canadian, literary masterpiece that people assign, the professors assign to their students.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What is it about this book that makes it, like, it's not really a hard question to answer what makes it controversial, scandalous, memorable in that way, salacious. But what makes it, what makes people take it so seriously is the question.
Well, it's well written. Like on the prose level, it has literary qualities, and it presents itself not as a sexual romp. It's not. I mean, it was they tried to market it kind of as weirdly as a romance novel, but it's
unless that was a satirical kind of cover.
Yeah, again, this is all interesting. This is all fodder for people continuing to think about this book and coming back to it again later. It was considered a serious work of Canadian literature. The institutions, of major Canadian institutions of the 1970s could accept this as a work that had feminist value, as a work that had Canadian value, as an encounter with nature, and as a work that had literary value because it was well written. And so it's very unique book for the way that it kind of, the way it's not, obviously it's not like smut. It's like clearly not. It's clearly not. I mean, you wouldn't even really have smut like this published, really. You wouldn't have like bestiality themes in other kinds of books. Like, it wouldn't get published. Actually, the way this gets published is because it's literary.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say that it's titillating either.
No, it's not, I guess.
I mean, maybe some readers would find it was.
It's not written to be.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, it's more just, whoa. You're having sex with a bear, and like, you're kind of worried for her, obviously, because it is very dangerous. I mean, it's always... And it is written that way. And she is sort of like inviting, injury or even death, like literally inviting it, like saying, pull off my head and eat me,
Yeah. I mean, and she's able to make the book more palatable, so to speak. She has to dispose of the question of the ethics of having a bear in captivity in this way, right?
Yes.
Early.
Yes.
And so we can move on with the rest of the story. Now, I think in this day and age, it's much harder to do that. And I don't know if you could ever really dispose it, like get past that question in this book. Like, is it okay to, is she raping a bear?
People definitely ask that question. I mean, she is cajoling the bear into sexual acts that it can't really consent to. Like, she's not pinning it down and doing things to it. She's not harming it.
I mean, that's where the ambiguity comes in, because it's like she can't physically make it do these things. No. But
for the bear, it's not really sexual,
right?
As apparently, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
And then when it does sort of become sexual, well, like when the bear seems to be sexually aroused, instead of wanting sex, it wants to injure her.
Right, it seems to, or it's not even really clear if what I remember is like kind of playful.
Yeah, maybe like why did it do it? We don't know. Well, we can't know.
Maybe it's a playful thing. Like, it wouldn't hurt another bear, right?
Maybe, but like the bear's been like batting her around and not scratching her, so it seems to know the difference. But I mean, we just don't know, and of course. There's the whole question of like, is she abusing the bear? Is the bear being like unforgivably tormented by being kept in, and it is being tormented by being kept in captivity.
Yeah.
And then like, are the indigenous people in the story being depicted in an offensive way, which like they kind of are. That's a little bit racist.
Well, certainly the indigenous character is there to exculpate the main character, because the indigenous woman who is the bear's caretaker, who says, oh no, the bear's better off the way it is. that helps the story go forward, getting past the question of
well, it's not her who says that, it's the guy who owns the store, but yeah, the indigenous woman has like a special relationship with the bear.
Okay.
But I mean, there's like kind of the implication maybe the indigenous people have like a special relationship with animals and nature.
Yeah.
The white character is kind of swooping in and, I don't know, colonizing that or like appropriating it or playing with it for a summer and then leaving it again, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be that, and I mean, it could be that Marian Engel was like thinking about those things at the time, you know?
So does this woman abuse a bear for her own sexual liberation? Is that how people might see it?
No, I don't think so. Like, it's written in such a way that you might say like, okay, like she really shouldn't have done that. But like the bear doesn't seem harmed at all. The bear doesn't seem forced into doing anything. And the bear, it's very much like she treats the bear better than the bear has ever been treated before. Well, I don't know about that, but she lets the bear in the house. She lets the bear go swimming with her in the lake. Like, she's really nice to the bear. She cooks the bear breakfast.
Okay.
You know? Mm-hmm. So she's treating the bear really well.
Yeah.
And the bear does initiate the whole licking thing to begin with.
Right.
I'm not saying that she should, that, you know, there's no ethical questions here about her treatment of the bear, but it doesn't seem like, I think it would be a big leap to say this is a book about animal abuse.
Yeah.
About her abusing this animal.
Right. I mean, it's, it is ambiguous. It's the reason why people still sometimes talk about this book.
I mean, there's obviously a lot there to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of baffling too, right?
Yeah. And like the bear, like speaking of baffling, like the bear is inscrutable to her. Like that's a big part of her relationship with the bear. Mm-hmm. The bear is inscrutable to her. She doesn't know what the bear wants or is thinking or like why the bear does what the bear does or doesn't do at different times. And she can't know it's a bear, right?
Yeah. And
she's always saying like, it's not a metaphor. It's a bear. It's a bear. Yeah. I mean, what does it all mean, Aaron? What does it all mean?
I don't know. I'm not really sure how to wrap this up. I mean, what is your feeling? What is your takeaway?
I had a really superficial read of this book, and I went into it with all of this baggage of like, this is a book I feel like I've just heard about for so long, and people are quite sort of dismissive and laughing at it. But at the same time, taking it very seriously, like different people, obviously, but it's taken very seriously as Canadian literature. And at the same time, people who are not like scholars of Canadian literature, when they see that cover and they hear like this is a story about a woman having a sexual relationship with a bear and the whole like eat me bear line and everything, like people are just tempted to laugh at it and find it absurd, right? So because of those two different preconceptions going into it, this book has this cultural baggage. Then clearly there's all this stuff in there that's this kind of like, it's very well written. The voice is somehow like so classic Canadian literature. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like I very much felt a lot like Margaret Atwood, like early Margaret Atwood.
It did, for sure.
And
it's a little arch. I mean, the third person narrator is very precise.
Yeah.
A little bit arch, a little bit cold, which adds another dimension to the narration too, because it is describing this kind of this sexual encounter, but that narrative style is kind of distancing, actually.
But like a woman in her 20s,
who
is sort of alienated and lonely.
She's in her 20s.
In her late 20s.
Late 20s. Okay, it's interesting. I mean, because this is a person that to me seemed like they're in their 40s, because it's like someone whose life has been beaten. She's been beaten down by life.
Sure.
That's what it feels like, actually.
Yeah, it does feel like that.
That's also an interesting, the way that, how you watch old movies and you're like, oh, that person who looks 50 was like 38.
Oh, yeah, it is like that.
Yeah.
And because, at 27, she's not married. She's not partnered. She's alone. Like, this is a big deal.
In the 70s, yeah.
Yeah, and she doesn't want those things.
Yeah.
Like, she likes solitude. She likes books. She likes her life. Sort of, but she also is lonely. She has sexual desires, but they're not met.
Yeah.
In a way that's at all satisfying. And she's just sort of passive not passively, but she's being used by her boss in a sexual way. She's like it very much reminds me of Margaret Atwood characters and of that time as well.
Yeah.
Like in the 70s where it's like, I don't want to have the same life my mother had. I don't like how, I get involved with a man and the next thing I know, he just wants me to like keep his house clean or whatever. And I'm not supposed to do anything anymore except like be his woman.
This character has those concerns?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not a small thing to have a book of yours still being read decades after you've died. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that says something about the quality of the book. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just like, skip the boring bits and go to the cunnilingus with the bear. Like the whole book is worth reading. The whole book is compelling. And worth revisiting or visiting for the first time, as I did. But it's not just like, this kind of silly, pulpy book, like has these shocking bits about sex with a bear. Like the whole book is interesting in its own right.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're recommending Marian Engel's Bear.
Yeah, I think I would recommend it I recommend it, definitely. I mean, I would also recommend it like to readers who just assume that it's dismissible, mm-hmm. That it's silly, that it's some ridiculous story, like overly Canadian story that's like cringy and scandalous. And I mean, all of those preconceptions, I would say like try to put them aside and just like read this book with an open mind and maybe without looking too closely at that original cover. Although the cover is kind of amazing.
I mean, honestly, you should probably look at the cover.
I mean, you should look at the cover, but take it with a grain of salt.
A lot of these books too, I mean, they're interesting, partly because they can't be written today. It is of its time. And
it's very much of its time.
And so it's interesting as a time capsule because it's not the kind of book that could be written today.
Yeah, although I'm sure people still to write that kind of book today. But
a book like that couldn't be taken seriously today if it were published.
You don't think so?
I just think the way that ethics have changed around animals, especially, that book could not be taken seriously and as. But also like
indigeneity and like settler Canadians' relationship with the land. Like there's so many things in there, and I mean it has a particular flavor of feminism that's like feels of its time as well.
Yeah.
Not that it's like I don't want to dismiss that 70s feminism. Like it's very important. It's just that it is like, it feels like 70s feminism.
Yeah.
Like this is a book of its time.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yeah, like you can't write a 70s book, a 1970s book in 2024.
Yeah.
That's like earnestly exploring the same issues in the same earnest way.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for telling me all about Bear. Well, I'm not sure how to close this out exactly. I mean, I guess we did an okay job.
I mean, my question for you is whether at this point in your life you would be interested in having a relationship with a...
No. Don't finish that question. I know. I actually happen to be wearing a T-shirt from Waterton Lakes. Is it a national park or provincial park? I don't remember. In Alberta, southern Alberta. I think it might be a
national park. Like it's on
park.
The border of Montana and Glacier National Park
is on the other side.
Yeah, and it's one big park. So I do think it's
the two parks.
It's two national
parks connect down there over the border. Anyway, I happen to have this T-shirt on that has a big face of a bear, and I honestly, I can't tell if it's a grizzly or a black bear that I'm looking at here. But I just happen to be wearing this shirt.
Well, I happen to be wearing socks with bears on them.
This is how deeply ingrained the bear is.
So I guess it's true that Canadians are just constantly covered in bear paraphernalia and bear imagery.
It is, as an animal, the bear is like very symbolic.
Yes.
I mean, I know that we have like whatever the beaver is supposed to be the actual
and
national
at the
animal.
end of the book it says when she's like saying goodbye to the property, there's a beaver pond. She notes where she never saw a beaver.
Oh, never saw a beaver.
No, all bear, no beaver.
Jeez, we have down Calgary's got a great little beaver pond down.
Don't tell anybody about it.
It's in the middle of the city. It's like a tourist attraction. Princess Island. It's a lovely little pond where you can go see beavers swimming around.
They're really nice.
Naomi and I enjoyed it a lot.
You'd rather see those than a bear, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to have an encounter with a beaver.
You're afraid of bears.
Well, yeah, it does. It does like taint my experience of the outdoors. I have to say, I don't.
You're always afraid we're going to see a bear.
I'm often afraid. It's one of the reasons I don't love hiking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll do it, and it's nothing really to do with the physical exertion. I'm fine with that part of it. It is there's the whole experience of going hiking. I don't always love, and one of the reasons is because I'm afraid of bears, and I don't like having to worry about bears, and I don't like all the stuff you're supposed to do to be bear aware, like having bells or spray or anything like that.
Well, babe, I think that the chances of being attacked by a bear are a lot lower than you seem to think.
Well, they're not. They're better than zero. That's for sure. Unfortunately,
it's true.
So yeah, this book that's the other reason this book appeals to is because the bear is such a potent animal symbol and animal experience for so many Canadians.
Have you seen a bear?
Yeah, I've seen a bear. I've seen a bear from the car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, driving. I've seen bears on the side of the road.
Yeah, like walking across the highway or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a bear in Glacier National Park.
On the other side in Montana.
On the other side in Montana. A bear cub.
Yeah.
And then off a ways away was the mom.
That's a particularly dangerous situation.
I know, but they didn't eat me, so it's okay.
We made it this far.
Yeah. And they were cute.
Yeah, that is an issue. It is a thing about them. They're quite cute, especially the cubs.
Well, it's hard to believe that this animal's gonna rip your face off.
Well, you just have to get a little bit closer to feel the fear, I think.
I know. Well, I didn't go up to it and try to pet it or anything.
No. But that did ruin your day, right? And you had to turn around and come back.
Yeah, you're supposed to go back at that point. So, yeah.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. Anyway, bears, powerful creatures. That's obviously the source of the sexual attraction too, right?
Well, yeah, she kind of wants the bear to eat her.
She says it. So she's on the record.
Although we're not sure exactly what she meant by that.
Okay, so there's debates about it. Well, there's kind of two meanings possible. So. And
she meant both.
Yeah.
We think.
Probably.
But we don't know for sure.
Okay.
She probably doesn't even know for sure what she meant.
Right. It was in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she made it through. She made it through her experience with the bear.
Well, she came out the other side a better, stronger woman with more agency.
See, that's the thing. A book like this, it has to end. I guess it really has to end there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't mind the proof, seeing the receipts about how it actually made her better in real life. The bear too.
It might not be. There might not be receipts involved. It might just be a different way of feeling and being. It's not necessarily she's gonna go and confront the boss or whatever.
Who has the rights to Marian Engel's estate? Because writing Bear 2, a sequel to Bear.
Yeah.
Ever thought about that?
No, I haven't.
Naomi is an accomplished novelist. Could you do this?
I will not be doing
that. Bear 2.
Bear 2. Return of the bear.
Return to the lair.
Return to the lair. Yeah. I don't know. It could be the bear actually had a cub and now that's the pet. And then another woman goes there. And the same thing happens.
Cub. Oh no. Yeah. But this bear, it would have to be more cartoonish. It would have to be, because you can't have, the bear would not be living in captivity. It would have to be a free roaming bear who's just cool with hanging out or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I don't want to sit here and work out the plot of this novel because I'm not interested.
Okay, that's fine.
You just said it can't be written now. Then you're you should.
No, but a different way. It could be done in a different way.
Okay, well, you can do that. It could be instead of a woman, a man this time.
A man writing the sequel to this feminist, this classic feminist text. A man writes the sequel.
Well, it could be okay, I don't even want to talk about it. It's a terrible idea. Okay.
This is an era of, of sequels, of remakes, of revisitations.
That's true.
Yeah.
So it could be Bear 2024.
Bear
2024. The bear licks again.
Oh, no.
I don't know. What do you want?
Okay. Anyway,
I don't like this idea at all. I think
that's
you're
right. Listen,
way off base.
we're just gonna put it off on the shelf. I have a few other ideas to
Okay.
tackle first.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. But if one of us writes it, I guess it should be me. Because Aaron, I really don't think it should be you. I'm sorry.
Well, anyway.
Just find another
Well,
animal.
now you're gonna have to fight me for it
Why don't you find another animal?
to write it back.
Your book could be called Beaver.
Oh, come on! No, let's stop it.
You stop it. You're the one that started this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to stop this episode now.
Yeah. All right.
It's time. It's late. This was a late record.
I feel like
if you can't tell, this was a rather late record for us, and we were experimenting
Aaron,
a little bit.
please don't write the book I just suggested.
Okay, I won't. I promise I won't.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Good night and goodbye.